not lost. Nevertheless, if inaction persists, European nations may face a level of crisis that could ignite unintended consequences. Rapid demographic shifts dominated by largely hostile cultures, coupled by a European institution that blatantly refuses to abide by the continent's own common denominators to include democracy and shared Judeo-Christian norms and values, are undoubtedly threatening Europe with civilizational erasure. Can Europe prevail then? Good evening, I'm Jonathan Hessen, and welcome to our latest edition of TV7 Europa Stands. To join me in dissecting today's intricacies and challenges faced by the European nations are Dr. Rafael Bardaji, formerly Spain's National Security Advisor, currently CEO of Worldwide Strategy.
My pleasure.
Professor Rosenthal, formerly the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of the Netherlands.
Thanks for having me.
And last but not least, Mr. Timo Soini, formerly our host country, Finland's Foreign Minister and Deputy Prime Minister. It's a pleasure having all three of you with us today. And I'd like to start with you, Dr. Bardaji. You just published a couple of days ago a very interesting piece about the complexities related to what was stated in a national security strategy published by the United States under the Trump administration, in which the Americans are saying that we want to support our allies in preserving the freedom and security of Europe while restoring Europe's civilizational self-confidence and Western identity. This did not sit very well with European elites at large, broadly speaking, with Kaja Kallas, however, stating, the representative, of course, of the European Union, we haven't always seen eye to eye on different topics, but I think the overall principle is still there. We are the biggest allies and we should stick together. What are we to take out of all of this fiasco, if I may call it that?
Well, I think what we see is that the Western world is splitting. And it's splitting, I mean, we were in Europe, the cornerstone and the cradle of the Western civilization for centuries. But the Western values and ideas are probably like the energy, cannot be destroyed, but it can move away from where it was born. No? I think now the West is basically residing in one country, the United States of America, under Trump. The West was marching to the precipice and collapsing under Obama and Biden and the Europeans all together with this woke mentality, this over-regulation of companies, the lack of interest in the new technologies in the past. Now that has been changed in America, but it's not changed yet in Europe. What the national security strategy of the United States is saying is that if the European Union and the Europeans at large do not change their course of actions, by 2040, Europe will cease to exist as we know it today. And I understand that the European leaders and representatives are mad at what is said in this document, but sincerely, I think it's because it's true. We have problems in technology, we have problems in the financial world, we have problems in innovation, we have problems in the economy, we have a crime and criminality rocketing up. We have a problem with illegal and legal immigration, lack of integration in our society. We have promoting these multicultural societies that are going nowhere. And nobody from the European Union or many governments are responding to those real problems. What the governments in Europe know how to do is just to increase taxes and increase the expenditure. But beyond that, they are very lack of ideas. No? Also, we have an open war in Ukraine, and Europe has to define the relationship not only with Ukraine, but with Russia in the long term. And we have a terrible penetration in our economy by China. I think because the Europeans didn't like Trump, they were embracing Beijing as if were the only alternative, and I think it's totally wrong. No? We are just moving in the wrong direction in that sense. And yes, going back to the question, I think we have a Western wall in America, a post-Western wall in Europe, and probably a pre-Western wall in the Middle East. How do we manage all this kind of stuff? It's an open question, and we will need very smart leaders, which I don't see them in Europe nowadays.
Professor Rosenthal?
Well, let me follow up on this national security strategy. I would hope that the European leaders and the European politicians would take it up as, again, a wake-up call. But unfortunately, the response has been what is used to be called an unwelcome message. It is, up till now, you see that also in the media, as Bardaji said, it's considered to be a piece, a document of madmen. I think we have to take it very, very seriously and to act upon it. If I look at the diagnosis, the analysis of the document on the situation in Europe, I think they hit the point, they hit the mark point by point. Talking about, we are talking in cliches like sustainable development. A New York Times journalist wrote it this morning. We see feckless foreign policy gestures like recognition of Palestine as a state. We see, I say it in my own words, virtue-obsessed stance on mass migration. Wir schaffen das, Angela Merkel said many years ago. At the same time, talking economics, again, Germany. I remember it when I was a Minister of Foreign Affairs. We had a meltdown in a Japanese nuclear plant. The day after, this same Angela Merkel said, we are doing away with nuclear energy. We are still having the problems. I'm talking about a total denial of the influx of people who don't accept, don't understand, don't accept, and by now fight our Western values, our Judeo-Christian foundations of our Western civilization. And when I look at what has to be done, we need, for instance, massive rearmament, Ukraine, etc. We need people to understand that war is not around the corner, but the situation with regard to security and safety is changing. I quote literally a French politician who said, we are not ready to accept losing our children. 16% of the Italian population is willing to fight for their country, 18% in France. And when I repeat this one-liner, we are not ready to accept losing our children, you could ask yourself, how many children will we have in 10, 20, 30 years' time, because the demographic trends are awful. In my city, Rotterdam, we have by now the birth of Mohammed as a majoritarian name. The ordinary names, going back to Judeo-Christian kinds of foundations, are not given anymore. That's the situation we are in. So we need action.
Yeah, and I must say that whatever happens in European politics, the elites, irrespective of the country, have four key cornerstones. More immigration, more Europe, more green transition, more LGBT and woke. Irrespective of the result and irrespective of the country, and all of these four are catastrophic. if I visited London a few weeks ago, and the top three things were illegal immigration, legal immigration, and the cost of energy. And that has virtually wiping out the Conservative Party because they didn't deliver what they promised. And Labour is unfortunately not better at all.
Well,
then
the Tory party in the UK was the one that passed all the woke legislation in the European Union over the years.
Everything in.
So
and then
more conservative.
And more Europe means usually that you are giving your sovereignty and your in a way money to be dealt with the bureaucrats in Brussels, not to be decided in your home country and in your home yard. And that is something which is acceptable for some reasons if it profits you more, for example, in the trade policy and so forth, when we have a big market of 500 million people. That can be then, in a way, there are grounds for that. But in general things, there are no that sense. Then green transition, like Yuri said, Germany gave up the nuclear energy. That was the most stupid energy decision of for 50 years. And the green movements, they have no responsibility whatsoever what happens in the outskirts and in the countryside. These are the parties of the big cities. And this is the revolt of the ordinary people from outside the big cities throughout every country. That is why yellow sleeves are going onwards in France and everywhere else. Because people think that not only European elite, but their own elite has neglected, doesn't care. And then we have this madness called woke and LGBT and everything else. People, girl is a boy, boy is a girl, and whatever. And that is generated the army of bureaucrats who are getting their bread woking and surveilling our social media accounts, and you can be destroyed virtually in university life, in business life, for a wrong tweet. This is madness.
Well, no, some European elites have just come out and stated that they resent the allegations leveled against them about being less and less free in European society, particularly those bureaucrats in the European institutions of the European Union. But Dr. Bardaji, if we really look at what's been happening, and naturally this is also happening in the United Kingdom, we are seeing that there is a crackdown on the intellect of individuals, the free speech of individuals. The foundations that Europe has been founded upon are, I'm saying this with a very heavy heart, are no longer.
Yeah, I think it's a good question to see and to assess whether the European Union is promoting the liberal values of a democracy or they are just promoting a kind of Chinese control society. You know? When you see the Digital Act, which is trying to impose censorship on everyone under the pretext of protecting the kids from pedophiles, I think there's a movement which is totally unacceptable. I would also add, for instance, something that the young generation are less accustomed is the use of cash in the economy. I think the digital euro is going to be another twist in our arms as free citizens, and the control that the European Union is enlarging every day will make us less free directly. And the assault on religious speeches and freedom has been staggering. And I think it's time to come up and say, okay, the Europeans take religion seriously back in their lives, because the only way you can discern between the bad things and the good things. And I would also say that I don't read any more constitutions in Europe. I think we need to introduce the 10 Commandments as the main guidance for our lives. Sincerely, I think we have lost totally our bearings, and we are trapped in this philosophy that everything goes have the same values. We are not better than anyone else, and that's the wrong approach. And it's a strategic mistake because when you don't believe in anything, you believe in the most stupid things all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening.
That's literally what's happening. And I relate entirely since productions we make, including Europa Stands, today we can pretty much not promote it in European Union countries or in the United Kingdom. Immediately they flag us on social media as being political, which since when is being political a crime? But this is the way we need to deal with, of course. Thankfully, we can still broadcast on cable channels and satellite channels, but if we didn't have that, which most channels don't do, that would be a terrible trend to be living in, and it is a terrible trend.
Well, talking about a wake-up call and going for the action, going for genuine action, by now I hear that we should defend our foundations of our Western civilization. I would say we have to do it, but by offensive means. I can't see it differently.
But how would you do that in practical matters?
Well, let me give you one example. In my country, one of the most prominent people in the media is on the right side of the spectrum. And he said a few days ago that he is going to support a group which he calls a conservative movement, where especially people who are believing, who are among the Christian part of the population, should really get their act together. When I look at the street scene in the capital, in many capitals of Europe, it looks as if it is given away to Muslims who are using their megaphones to the extent that at a certain moment, for instance, ringing the church bells is being considered an offensive to them.
In the Netherlands?
Instead of the different story. And talking about free speech, we had a very interesting confrontation a few days ago in Parliament, where at a certain moment, and that is typically the offshoot of this woke thing, where it was said in a resolution in Parliament that Article 1 of our Constitution, which is the non-discriminatory principle, has to give a priority over the Article 8, which is freedom of religion and freedom of speech. There you go. And while in my country, as in other European countries, people got mad on G.D. Vance's message in Munich about these sort of things, you know, you see it happening before your own eyes. You see it happening before your own eyes.
And yet I don't see people coming out into the streets and protesting.
Well, there we go. There we go. And if I may make it a little bit an argument on some other things, when I look at also the quite intensive way in which this national security strategy is talking about the lethargy in the on the economic side in Europe. You know, we need growth to do all the nice things for the people. Now, the well-known phrase is that the US is innovating, China used to imitate, but they are also innovating, and Europe is only one thing, it is regulating, suffocating your own free market, and by now, free speech. that's a situation. So I'm talking about the foundation of Western civilization. We should not be on the defense. We should be offensive and take the measures needed for that.
Yeah.
Mr. Soini, is it not time to run for politics once more and fight this battle?
It could be, and I never say never again, but I must say that the big wave which wiped out the whole Europe was the recognizing of Palestinian state, and it was very unfortunate thing what happened in many countries. But in Finland, the party I founded, which is currently in the government, was able, with Christian Democrats, to block the thing. So Finland didn't recognize the artificial country of Palestine, but many so-called European democracies who has been long-standing steady democracies did that mistake. And now we are currently facing the boycott thing, which goes with the European Song Contest thing. The 5 countries has now made the removes that they are not participating on this because of what is happening in Gaza. And I think this is somehow...
But Finland was not part of it.
Not part of it.
Iceland,
Slovenia, Netherlands, and Spain.
And Ireland.
And Ireland. So-called quite sensible countries in so way. Well, Germany said that if Israel is not part, they won't participate if Israel is not included. But this shows how long a shadow this whole thing has. And it is run mainly from the universities and the business, not necessarily business elite, but media elite is trying to put this forward. And if you oppose this, you hate people who have lost their lives and their relatives and their children in the conflict. Of course, that is regrettable. But the first thing is always forgotten. 1,300 people were blatantly murdered with the Hamas attack, where the whole tragedy started for this time. And these kind of things are going on, and I'm sorry to say that here in Finland we have a court case of Päivi Räsänen, 7 years, because still in the highest court now, when she said the thing which should be, how would I say, clear for all of us, that a marriage is between one man and one woman, and that is hate speech. This is madness. And we know that Päivi Räsänen and Bishop Juhana Pohjola, they will hold the line. But the task and the focal point is for everybody else. It's not the punishment of the court decision, but the process is the punishment, that you are going to be hung up in the public area for 7 years if you dare to open your mouth. And this is outrageous. Unbelievable.
Look what is happening now that we are in Christmas time with the Christmas markets all around Europe.
Exactly.
I was in London also recently, and what I saw was a bunch of Muslims chanting Allahu Akbar with torches, intimidating the people who were just tourists or families, and the Metropolitan Police protecting those disruptors, actually. So we need to take into consideration that the Muslim has transformed themselves somehow, part of them, into a political movement of conquest in the social public space. Unless we recognize this threat from within, we are just blinding ourselves to a reality that will end that very badly.
But these Christmas markets, it's amazing to me that it can happen, and that I don't hear any objections from the political leaders.
This is the thing.
They just don't want to speak out. And the simple, I have said in the open to our political leaders, including those of my party, that they are simply cowards. They lack courage.
And that is why I also...
Look at Keir
But
Starmer.
why? I really ask myself
Because
why?
they are afraid to lose voters. And
But don't they lose voters by not doing anything?
Well, simple. In my country, we have 1 million Muslims. We have, I have a Jewish background.
Yeah.
We have 40,000 Jews.
Yeah.
Count your votes, count your seats in parliament. Very simple, very simple.
Yeah.
It's a corollary of no vote TV and VTV. No votes, no presence in television.
But Christmas markets, which is an environment for families,
Yes.
is usually attended by the Christian masses and the secular masses, which happen to be still the majority,
Yeah.
for the time being, still the majority. And I ask myself, is there no outcry from the so-called silent majority that we're seeing in Great Britain now? People are going with Nigel Farage. In the Netherlands, with Geert Wilders, he has scored the highest scores in not the last election, the one before that.
Sure.
But he's still much higher than his past glory, so to speak. And in Spain, Vox is also rising rapidly, being one of the founding fathers of Vox. So you do see a certain shift of the silent majority that unless they remain quiet, they will become the minority and you'll turn into a reality of a violent majority that will take over.
I think you have a point, and in that sense that center-right, so-called traditional center-right, they have take their support as a gift which is coming day by day, year by year, election by election, not doing anything because there is no option. And they are mad scared to be labeled extreme. But now people are at the verge of big frustration because they think that you are not delivering, you are not listening, you don't get it. And now people are ready to vote so-called alternative parties who are straight away labeled to be extreme, and people don't want to be extreme. And then we are getting to the question, is it extreme to be a Christian or Judeo-Christian value-oriented human being? Of course it's not, but it is tried to be labeled that that is kind of extreme
cancel
thinking.
Culture.
It is, and it's outrageous. And that is why we shouldn't be so upset when Trump is saying that you have weak leaders. I don't necessarily mean weak in military terms, but in mental terms.
Also in military terms, I don't see any true leader who showcased his prowess in the military battlefield anytime.
And this is bad.
Well, I mean, thank God that there was peace for this period of time, but this peace is not lasting in Europe if the situation continues this way. And we're seeing what's happening in Russia. Let's turn to Russia. Dr. Bardaji, we're seeing that on the one hand, the Russians are making advances. They're not significant advances, even though the last report I saw that the Russians managed to capture a couple of territories that were under siege for a very long time. And we do hear that the Americans, of course, with their demands to reach a certain cessation of hostilities in, of course, response to the latest, there will be some territorial concessions in that context. The European response to that was, well, we don't really have money to give you.
Indeed, we don't have the money. That's the problem. And we don't have the weapons even to give as a gift to the Ukrainians. That's the bad situation where the Ukrainians are facing. No? So it is time for being pragmatic and say, okay, what can be achieved in the coming months vis-a-vis Ukraine and Russia and the invasion of Ukraine by Russian forces. But sincerely, I think maybe I'm in a minority view here. I think the sooner we get a deal, the better for Ukraine and for the rest of Europe. And since we don't want to confront militarily Russia, even if Russia has been diminished as a military power after 2 years or 3 or 4 years in Ukraine being bogged down. We still don't want to confront militarily Russia directly. So what we need is to strengthen our deterrence. Don't forget that we have lived with a Soviet Union who was much more powerful in nuclear terms, and we were able to establish a coexistent deterrent, self-deterrence policy. You know? I think we need to re-establish deterrence. We need to set the red lines very clear to Moscow and say, okay, those are our triggers, and try to reconstruct the relationship with Moscow little by little in a more positive way, if it's possible. But unfortunately, I think we don't have the means, we don't have the money, and probably we don't have the willingness and the stamina to keep fighting through the Ukrainians until the last blood of the Ukrainians themselves.
But you're speaking about, during the Soviet Union, the German military had divisions with thousands of tanks.
Yeah.
And the Netherlands had multiple divisions with plenty of capabilities. Last I checked, all of that was dismantled.
Yeah, well, the famous dividends. But don't be wrong. We had many in the accountant books. We have many tanks, planes, and everything. But the real deterrence was the American troops,
of course,
and the American nuclear weapons.
Of course,
that's the reality. So that's the problem. Without America, the Europeans are nothing.
Bare boned.
Well, Professor Rosenthal, I mean, the Americans have a different approach these days, which still they are committed to NATO because they understand the value of NATO from an American perspective. They are much more committed to bilateral relations with stronger nations of like-minded natures. But at the same time, I ask myself, when will the European nations, and this is just, it's not just one nation, but multiple nations, start to operate in a fashion that will really bolster their capacity to protect their own people, not only domestically, as we just spoken about, their negligence to the social security, which is the #1 responsibility of every nation to protect their people, but also from foreign adversaries, and we're seeing that there's negligence there as well.
Right. Well, let me pick up one point. When I did my close reading of the national security strategy, it was, in one sense, more nuanced than it is said to be. For instance, the complaints of in the national strategy of Trump are especially directed to Western European countries, Western European. It says that Central and Eastern European countries and South of Europe, I would say, with the negative exception of Spain, they are, they put their cards on Eastern and Central Europe and on Southern Europe, especially Italy, of course, at the moment. That's one. Secondly, the story, when the Western allies had their victory over Nazi Germany and Japan, afterwards, in the UK, they went for to actually compensate for the misery of the people by building up the welfare state.
Yeah.
The Beveridge Report.
Yeah.
Since then, we have always had this warfare-welfare question. The trade-off between warfare, paying for your defense, paying for your security, helping out other countries which are in military disarray, versus social benefits, education, health, and what have you. By now, we had former Labour Party leader, who was also a commissioner in the European Commission, Frans Timmermans, who in the campaign, which he lost now, literally said, if we have to give 15 to 20 billion extra for defense, for security, we need the same kind of extra impulse in the welfare state. Where do you get the money from? From the taxpayer, from the ordinary citizen. So to make the hard choices seems to be very difficult. They are hard choices. They are tragic choices. And the tragic choices, they are avoided. And we have to actually do what is necessary. It's not a matter, as Kissinger said, you have two ways to go. It is choice or necessity. And by now we are talking necessity. That's my...
Well, Mr. Soini, Finland is in a better situation, militarily speaking, but nonetheless...
Militarily speaking, we are. We have a conscription army and we didn't cut out our military budget. We have the steady and good situation. In that sense, we are getting back the landmines. We are doing gradually the things. What is needed, we are going to order F-35 fighters from US. We are selling icebreakers to US. And this is happening not via Europe, but bilateral basis. And that is a good achievement. I also agree what Yuri said, that when we had a big neighbor just beside us called Soviet Union, communist dictatorship, we had to improve the state of the poor people, of those working class people, in order to give them healthcare, give them schooling, in a way that they are not going to get radicalized. And I think this was the big story and big European success also throughout the continent that time. Now we have also the kind of threat, authoritarian threat from Russia. But what is now the story? What are we now giving to the people who are doing redundant because of AI? And the young people are not getting out of the apron strings of their parents, not getting to starting the family. We are a dying nation. When I was born, there were 60,000 babies born at 62. Now there are 43,000 babies born this year, and 7,000 of them are not from the families by Finnish language. So we are seeing the kind of the people who have been 80 and onwards, they are increasing rapidly, and the amount of people who should support them are diminishing, and then we are immigrating the people who are not actually working, which is net zero minus what they are producing to the society, and then we are angry if somebody criticizes us.
Well, let me also add, if I may, that now the need for defense expenditure or increasing the defense expenditure are used for many politicians as the alibi to increase taxes. But again, I have to remind everyone that we are spending 2% and we are reaching up to 4% in the best cases. Why would it be better just to cut the other 96% that is going somewhere else?
Yeah.
Because 4% is not going to change revolutionary any economy. It's too tiny still, even if we double the expenditures on military issues. So I think we have to revise the energy transition, all the welfare pensions and benefits from immigration. We have to revise the healthcare. We have to revise all the biggest expenditure within the public budget.
Yeah.
Because defense is just a tiny portion.
Exactly.
A tiny portion.
Well, the funds, however, let's go to Spain for a moment, since the current government defied NATO by saying, no, we're not going to spend more than...
Well, they first signed it, and then on the press conference say, no, we are not going to do it.
Right, they defied it, as I... Now, within that context, Spain, which used to have a very formidable military in the past, is now in a position where it spends how many times fold for illegal migration?
Well, the last studies I saw were probably 10 times more on
Than its defense
migration
budget.
than defense budget.
Well, how about not deal with the migration issue, lower the spending there and redivert it to the right places?
Simple as that we have a kind of social communist government that believes in immigration as a way to enrich our society through multiculturalism. That's the issue. And also because some good people in the conservative camp believes, after years of being told so that the immigrants are here to pay for our pensions, which is not true. And so, you know, it's very difficult to fight this mythology about immigration, but it has to be done because, yes, we are spending 10 times more on supporting socially the immigrants than spending our military.
Let's focus our conversation a bit more. Last week, there was, or the last foreign ministerial of the North Atlantic Alliance of NATO, your close friend, Professor Rosenthal, Meneer Rutte, came out and stated that Russia is working very closely with China, Iran, and North Korea, preparing for a long-time confrontation with the West. This is something that has been known for quite some time, though many leaders shied away from that reality. And now that it's stated out in the open with the previous Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg, as well as the CMC of NATO at the time, Admiral Brouwer and others, came out and stated Europe needs to prepare for harsh times, to prepare for making the sacrifices in welfare and what you all spoke about just now in order to prepare for what's coming. Now, democracies tend to be late when it comes to confronting those type of challenges, much for the fact that they are driven by the public rather than taking leadership from the get-go. And in this context, I'm asking myself, we see everybody getting ready. And yet it seems like the only country that is actually doing something is Germany, which is heavily investing, but it doesn't really know where to invest. And Poland, which has a very capable military at this point, but no money in order to back it. So those two countries, maybe the Italians, even though the Italian defense industry is more of a social type of way to provide people with some type of benefit. I ask myself, to what degree are we in a position to confront the challenges at hand rather than exclusively rely on the United States of America for being the strategic cushion that it is for continental Europe and the United Kingdom at this point?
Well, you phrased it in a very correct way, I think, very apt way, by talking about sacrifices, welfare sacrifices. And I would say that the leaders in Europe are far behind this notion of making real sacrifices. Look at what is happening in Germany. What happened in Germany last month. The cabinet, the Merz cabinet, nearly fell over very moderate adoption of the retirement schemes. I've written it down. In my country, we have a national budget for the government of about 600 billion.
Euros. Roughly 750, 800 billion.
30% is going to social benefits. 30% is going to health. And it is on the increase, of course, with the... 30% is going to education, that sort of thing. Defense plus internal security, crime fighting, etc., is just some 10-12% of the budget. While after the war, and Timo was talking about it too, you know, the curves were totally different. And when we talk about, at the moment, about indeed going for 3.5% of our budget for NATO, it is actually nothing. It's actually nothing. And we also neglect the internal dimensions of mass migration, which is with the influx of crime, etc., the continuous threat of terrorism, but we don't do what is actually needed. I repeat, unfortunately, we're talking sacrifices you make when it is really necessary. But we are still in the mood of having a free choice to go for more benefits, for more social benefits, more welfare, and we are lagging behind continuously on what is really necessary.
Well, the Netherlands will be relatively safe so long as Germany, the United Kingdom and Belgium don't turn hostile towards it. But, you know, as J.D. Vance stated, the next Islamist nuclear power is not going to be the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's more likely that Britain would become the next Islamist nuclear power. I hope, you know, with all the joking about it, I hope he's wrong, because the British people deserve better than that. But nonetheless, it is frightening to see what is happening there these days. Mr. Soini, let's focus on the emerging threats. Finland is preparing for the challenges at hand, but it joined NATO with the hope that it would double its capacity, if not more, vis-a-vis Russia, which is just across the border, having obviously the longest border between Russia and Finland, which is the longest NATO border these days.
Yes, it is,
But lay it down for us in layman's terms. What can be done better in order to ensure the sustainability of Western civilization in the very bleak reality that we're speaking of?
I think the Gulf of Finland will be the next focal point after the Ukraine war is going to be sorted out, or at least for a piece of some lasting time. St. Petersburg is kind of the pearl in the crown of Russia, as well as Moscow is. And I think that the tensions in the Gulf of Finland will increase, and we have two countries which has probably the best military in the West, Finland and Poland in this area. And it is in the interest of Russia rocking the boat somehow. Maybe Latvia, somebody like that will be the target of the hybrid operation very soon after this big thing is going to be settled, because Russia...
Not the Arctic?
No, Arctic is one of the big issues, because Russia has withdrawn of everything what comes to the Arctic. And that is going to be a big thing also in the future. And the good thing in the Arctic rivalry is that US is interested in the Arctic. And the whole Greenland issue is about this. It's not about who is going to have Greenland. It is to cut down the Chinese influence from Greenland. That is the thing. The US is not interested to hijack the Greenland, but US is mad interested to stop the onslaught of China to getting more say in the Greenland area, and that is why U.S. is not keen about the independence of Greenland, because they cannot be sure what is going to happen if the Greenland is so-called independent, whether it is going to give military bases because of big amount of money to the China.
And let's face it, it's not unprecedented for the United States to buy Alaska, for instance.
Yeah, for example.
Those type of transactions have happened across
civilization,
the course of history, particularly when countries were about to lose a territory, i.e. the Netherlands sold New Amsterdam to the British.
What a deal!
Who do you think will protect and defend Greenland better, Denmark or the United States?
U.S., of course.
Of course, that's the strategic issue, and that's clear cut.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, if we are talking in this front line, I mean, we have to be realistic. I want to remind also our viewers that we were from the pacifist European Union to the more militaristic institutions. Say we are going to spend 800 billion in weapons. Well, the money is not delivered yet. Even if the amount was there,
a small item
we didn't know in what to spend it and where to spend it.
So Rafael, that's a good point that you raise up here. We don't have very much time left for this, but nonetheless, the European Union is spending billions on Gaza, on Egypt, on Libya, on African countries that, the moment the United States announced under the current administration that U.S. aid will be no longer and that they'll reintegrate some of those agencies into the U.S. State Department, the European Union quite boastfully said, we will fill in the gaps.
Yep.
And they went and spent money all across Africa with no return on investment whatsoever at a time when the European Union doesn't have any money to spend.
Well, the European Union is a perfect machine of producing promises, but most of them are not fulfilled, sincerely. So you have to check where the money is going, no? What amount of money is spent. There are a lot of money spending in very stupid issues, actually, that should be focused or refocused in the European continent, actually. But you remember that I think it was Kissinger who said that when America press a red button, there's a missile getting out. When the European Union press a red button, it's a communique getting out. We are still stuck with this situation. Too much words, too little action, no? Unfortunately.
Well, we are drawing near to the end of our edition today. I would like to have some optimism infused into our discussion, since we are touching on very pressing issues, but nonetheless, those pressing issues may have some silver lining. As I stated in my first 4 words that I uttered in today's program, Europe is not lost. Make us believe that statement for a moment, Professor Rosenthal.
Well, I can be very brief on it. Let's hope that they will understand, the European leaders, that we are in a situation, I quote again Kissinger, not of choice, but of necessity. And better to act upon this notion of necessity than talking continuously from a sort of idea that you have a choice to make. There is not a question of choice. We have to understand that we have to defend ourselves, that we have to go for, in the mental phase, in the mental sphere, for the offensive. And I would also say, well, let's bite the bullet of this unwelcome message from the US side. Let's bite the bullet.
And that inaction needs to be pushed away, not only by European leaders, but also by the citizens of the respective countries.
Absolutely.
Throughout Europe as well, Mr. Soini.
And we must have a right balance between rights and responsibilities. We have being a loudspeaker of rights of this and that, not the responsibilities, not commitments. And then back to the basic values. We are a Judeo-Christian continent. We have hundreds of years of success based on these values, and let's prevail them.
Dr. Bardaji.
Well, I think for the first time in our recent history, there are political forces in every single country that are civilizational, and they are ready to fight for preserving our Western civilization in European countries. So, for the first time, there are forces that may present a combat and try to redress the situation which has been on the horrific path in the last 70 years, no? Or 40 years at least. So I think if there is hope, it's because those forces can replace the traditional parties and move into a more aggressive political stance defending our basic values.
But this is a transition, a transition of elites, which by definition, that's a revolution. And I don't know many revolutions that have gone without bloodshed. And that is a concern that needs to be taken into account, I would say.
Yeah, of course, but the alternatives are much worse. Unfortunately, I mean, it's surrender and erasure from our existence. No? And so at some point, you have to stand up and be ready to fight. No?
Thank you, Dr. Bardaji. I'd like also immediately to thank Professor Rosenthal and Mr. Soini, and to highlight to all of you at home that what we just discussed, what Dr. Bardaji just stated, Mr. Soini and Professor Rosenthal, is not just about European nations. It's also about Canada, about Australia, about New Zealand, South Africa, and other countries that were historically aligned with Western civilization and have lost their way no less than what's happening here in Europe and in some states within the United States of America as well. So ahead of Christmas, I'd like to also take this opportunity to wish you a Merry Christmas and to pray for a better new year. Follow in what we just heard right now. Go, if you don't go to your local church or your local congregations, go and look what it's about. Look what it's about, because if we don't unite around what I believe needs to be the cross, but if we don't unite around a single purpose, Western civilization will be lost. So this is something that I encourage you to do, and God willing, for a better 2026. Until then, from here in Helsinki, Finland, wishing you a good evening.